Well, welcome to this presentation series on where we find the sacred. I, at this point, do not know how many episodes in this presentation there will be, how many in the series, but I do know that there'll be at least 2. We'll start with the seas and probably move on to the sacredness of mountains next week. Also, this will be another sort of different presentation because I'm going to give plenty of time for reflection on several of the paintings, and I'll cue you in to where those will begin. A recent quote I offered this community goes like this: people go to the mountains to find God. They go to the wilderness to find themselves. Personally, I go to the sea to find both. Now, I'll admit up front, I am a sea person more than a mountain person. I used to live in a house that backed up to a brackish river, which emptied into the Chesapeake Bay. I also had a kayak, which I used to explore that river and its many tributaries. And often I used to imagine rowing that kayak all the way to the Chesapeake Bay and then on into the Atlantic Ocean, and rowing all the way to places like the Mediterranean Sea or down to the Caribbean. Now, theoretically, it was possible. Such imaginings come from the fact that I am a 5 on the Enneagram scale. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but what that means is that my main goal in life is discovering truth. And thus my highest value is freedom. The freedom to explore for such truth. The sea for me represents that freedom to explore. In fact, I experience viscerally that freedom whenever I visit the ocean. So look at this image. I am this monk contemplating this creation's majesty through the sea, and also feeling the call from the sea to explore more of life. Do you feel a bit of that looking at this work? What about this painting? The sea issues its seductive siren call to this seeker. It's an invitation to life's deepest mysteries. Before the 19th century, many, maybe even most paintings of the sea showed huge merchant or war vessels. Here we see a wide vast of sea filled with English ships. This scene tells us more about the power of English engineers to produce magnificent vessels able to channel the chaotic forces of nature for the sake of bringing great wealth and power to the nation. But with the Romantic painters of the 19th century, that focus in seascapes changed. I mentioned to you last week the current exhibit at the Denver Art Museum, the one titled Whistler to Cassatt, and I singled out Cecilia Beau. Well, now I would like to call attention to one of her friends, Alexander Harrison, who gifted us with extraordinary images of the sea. Now, I want you to take a moment right now to sit with this painting. Pay attention to the ideas it percolates. Pay attention to the feelings it awakens. If you have pen or paper, write some of these ideas and feelings down. I'll give you a minute or 2. All right, let's move on. The environmentalist John Muir is often associated with desert canyons and mountains, but he loved water too, and described our connection to the sacred, the divine, in watery terms. I've included a quote here from him. "We all flow from one fountain soul. All are expressions of one love. God does not appear and flow out only from narrow chinks and round bored wells here and there in favored races and places, but he flows in grand undivided currents, shoreless and boundless over creeds and forms and all kinds of civilizations and peoples and beasts, saturating all and fountainizing all." Take a moment to imagine visiting Alexander Harrison's shore that you see here in this painting, and sit down on the soft sand in the most comfortable position you can imagine. And I want you to close your eyes and listen. We'll refer to what you might have heard a little bit later in the presentation. The Catholic philosopher Peter Kreeft loves the sea, perhaps more than any other great natural symbol of divinity we have on earth. He referred to it in one lecture as, quote, "an icon of God," unquote. Why use such a phrase? Well, I'd like to spend the morning looking at some of his descriptions of the sea, why it holds so much fascination for him and for us. We will pause initially with each new image, say for a minute or two, asking those same questions I asked before. What ideas percolate in your mind when you look at it? What feelings awaken in your body? And feel free to write those down in the first minute or two of each slide. Here we go. Kreeft said that when he is near the sea, he feels its magic. What do you experience when you are by the sea? Do you feel its magic? Something perhaps supernatural or mystical? Take a look at what you wrote. During the Q&A, you'll have an opportunity to share what you may have written. Now on to the next image. Again, we'll take a minute or two. The sea is also overwhelmingly powerful and threatening. God or Gaia, whichever you prefer, is not always gentle, not always soothing. The divine, the sacred, can be quite ominous as well. commanding our deepest respect. So many spiritual traditions speak of a healthy, respectful fear of the divine. So too, we are to show a respectful fear of the sea, of its majesty, its greatness, and power. Now, on to a very different, or an image of a very different relationship between a boat and the sea. The sea is at the same time serene, and often it gently aids us. The works of Winslow Homer were my first artistic avenue into the spiritual nature of living water. Living water, that is, water that flows, that has a current. People prefer sailing to motorized travel because the combination of wind and current could be a sacred experience. Sometimes we work the current, but in religious rituals, the current works us. Some spiritual traditions that practice baptism will only baptize a person in such living water. It's a tangible symbol to the continual flow of the creative, divine spirit in the world and throughout the universe, and which is available to flow into our life if we surrender to it. Here's the next image. The sea is overwhelming in its vastness. The sea hides from us an amazing unknown topography. I recently read that we've only mapped about 20% of the seabed, and according to one site, only about 5% of the global ocean has been mapped by modern multi-beam sonar systems to provide a really, truly detailed, to give us truly detailed information about the seafloor. We know more of the geography of Mars and Venus than our own planet because of the sea's hidden world. The sea is mysterious, especially when we see it under moonlight. I believe people take up saltwater fishing not so much because of the desire to catch fish as the allure of the sea. In the vast darkness of it that we see here, we are reminded there's something about our world far, far greater than ourselves. That both humbles us, but also invites us to seek for more of this mystery. The sea is alive and creative. Like a great artist, a molder of clay, it continually shapes and shifts its borders. Now, this artist, Michelle Young, is one of my Facebook friends. I've admired her sea paintings for some time. On a recent post, she said this about this painting subject. She said, "In the 2 years this painting has toured across the country, the mammoth rock formation that you see right in the middle there has washed out to sea." Now, FYI, this painting has been exhibited at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum, Jamestown Settlement, the Gulf Quest Maritime Museum, Burroughs Chaplin Museum of Art, and the Minnesota Marine Art Museum. And in case you're interested, as of January 25th, it is still available for acquisition. Full disclosure, I have no financial business relationship with Michelle Young. I'm just passing that information on in case you're a seascape kind of person. The sea at times seems wrathful towards her coastlines. Michelle often paints the ocean's fury, especially toward rocky coastlines, but this fury is not something we hide our eyes from, is it? In fact, such fury captivates, commands us to gaze upon such wrath and marvel at it, even strangely admire it. Now, for this next image, I want you to take a moment to listen to me. Take a couple of deep cleansing breaths. And now I would like all of us to take a few cleansing, deep breaths, and I want us to listen. Really listen to the sound of our breath. Just do a couple of deep breaths. Go ahead right now. Now look at the waves in this painting. What sound do they make when they reach the shore? Isn't it just like our deep cleansing breaths? An endless series of rhythmic whooshes which calm us, soothe us, take us deep within ourselves, and then perhaps some mysterious place beyond ourselves. We can meditate quite easily at the sea. It's almost effortless. We can go and find a spot to ourselves somewhere, find a comfortable position to sit, close our eyes, and simply listen. Pretty soon, we are in deep meditation, experiencing our own spirit in a majestic, rhythmic synchronicity with the sea's spirit. Take a moment with this work. A seascape such as this painting from Claude Monet is a literal invitation to enjoy the sea's beauty. We hear the seductive call quite clearly. He's even provided a nice path for us. Our final two paintings come from one of the best marine painters of the 19th century, Russian romantic painter Ivan Ivazovsky. Look at the people floating on what is left of the mast of a ship. Is this a painting depicting a tragedy? Like life in general, the sea delivers both blessings and what seem at the time curses. It brings forth both life and death. as simply as the natural order of things. Now, these sailors have obviously survived the wrath of the sea. But what has Ivan actually painted for us? Is it just another shipwreck, seascape? Or is it an attempt to paint something holy and sacred? Because of their circumstances, these sailors are experiencing powerlessness. And now, in the context of the painting, having been forced to accept their powerlessness, they've let go to the vast sacredness of these waves, trusting in their power, and now seem almost blessed and favored even by that holy and sacred sea. Now on to our final painting. In the eyes of artist Ivazovsky, the sea is divinity itself. Vast, mysterious, beautiful, powerful, alive, and calling us into a relationship with it. Now, I realize some listening may have difficulty believing in a divinity. Nietzsche's prophecy indeed has come true. God is dead and we have killed him. But it's clear societies as a whole are suffering in the great void left behind. Perhaps finding solace for our souls, or even a renewed connection to whatever creative source may fill this universe, is only a trip to the sea or to an art museum away.